Yep.
So we're going to start in Zaynab, you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be. Don't ask me about a breakfast place because I can't think of names.
You're good. All right.
We're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. I'm told we're live now. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Sorry about the delay, just some minor logistics. My name's Alberto Villafan. I'm the digital producer at Sahan Journal. And this afternoon, we are discussing ICE operations targeting Somalis in Minnesota with Senator Zaynab Mohamed. Senator Mohamed, thank you so much for joining us today. Many tuning in are likely already know you or at least aware of who you are. But for those who do not, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Alberto. I love how you said Somali so perfectly because that's rare. I'm Zaynab. I am a state senator from Minneapolis. I represent District 63, which is in south, a little bit of southeast Minneapolis. And I've been in the legislature for the last 3 years, and I work a lot on immigration issues.
See, my trick is that if I don't know how to say a word, like in another language, I just pretend I'm speaking Spanish again. And usually that solves some of the problem.
That's good. I've been trying to learn how to speak Spanish. Yo hablo español poquito.
You'll get it. It's the easiest thing to learn.
Okay.
Back on topic. Thank you for introducing yourself, Senator Mohamed. We're glad to have you here today for this extremely important and sensitive conversation. You know, if you're listening and you have questions for Senator Mohamed, please share them in the chat. We will be sure to address your questions throughout this conversation. You know, I'm hoping, though, we could start with a little background on what we've all been seeing this past month, these past couple weeks. You know, first on December 2nd, President Donald Trump uses racist language to talk about Somalis, and he says, we don't want them in our country. He said several other choice words, but I'm not going to repeat the President of the United States. As you hear this language from the President, what is going through your mind?
Well, I was not shocked. I was disheartened. I was sad. But I wasn't shocked, and only because this is an unserious president who's been speaking of people of our community this way for the last decade. I think I was more so shocked at the level of action that he's taken since those statements that he made. But this is a president who says horrible things about people of color, about Black people, about Somalis, about immigrants, about people who are disabled, people who are LGBTQIA, anybody who's on the margins of our systems. He speaks of them in a way that is horrible, and it's sort of in like who he is. And so I'm never really surprised by the ways in which he describes people or speaks of them. I think I was more so surprised at the level of action that he took in terms of against our community, a small population of under 200,000 people, tiny population, and he's using every leverage in his toolbox to alienate us, to make us feel small, and it just shows how much of a bully he is.
Did you, I guess in the past year, did you ever expect something this targeted towards the Somali community? You know, we've seen similar things towards Latin Americans, Mexicans, Guatemalans, and Haitian immigrants as well, but for your own community?
No, I haven't, and only because our community is majority legal residents, right? They came to this country. Most of them are naturalized citizens. A lot of them United States citizens born here, often first, second, or even third generation Americans. You don't have a lot of undocumented Somali people. And so, yeah, I was surprised at the level of action, but I think the following days, the last 2 weeks, have showed me and others that this was really never about an immigration enforcement. This was about creating a culture in a world where he wants to create us versus them, where he wants to make us feel small, where he wants to alienate us so that we don't have support, other communities supporting us. But I think people in Minnesota are stepping forward, and they're speaking back, and they're showing him that this guy is just nothing of a bully, and they're not gonna allow their fellow Minnesotans, their fellow citizens, to be bullied in the ways that he wants us to be bullied. And I'm just really proud of our community.
We've been seeing so many community members of all different walks of life, not just Somalis, standing up or participating in these protests. You know, I guess what has been your reaction to seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, incredible. It's like it has the last 2 weeks has showed me how powerful, how well connected our community is, and how much they really just care about each other. Just small actions to like really large actions. A week ago, I made a video where I said we need to start a food drive. I'll take the first step forward. It's really important that we take care of our families who don't want to be outside right now because they don't want to be harassed by ICE agents. And we had hundreds of people drop off items, deliver to their neighbors. This isn't, organized by anything other than just community members wanting to do good. We've had families reach out who said, I'm afraid of staying in my place. ICE knows where I live. We've had other families step up and say, I will house these people. We've had people who said, I want my mother to stop working or my dad to stop working because I don't want ICE to interact with them. We've raised them thousands of dollars privately. And so I think what it showed me is how powerful our community is collectively and how much we just really care about each other. And we are in a moment where people are seeing what this government is doing. And this is what an authoritarian government looks like. And it's really scary. And I think folks are leaning more on community and not leaning towards institutions. And I think that's really powerful because it's the best way we can build the community we want to be a part of.
Two things real quick. First, do you mind sitting a little closer to the microphone? I want to treat it like a lollipop. Yeah, there we go. That way everyone can hear you a little better. Second up, real question. When the president of the United States says your community, Somalis, don't belong in Minnesota, it makes it seem like Somalis need to justify their existence here in their home, which seems a little unfair and possibly impossible. As a Somali person, how do you deal with that? Like trying to justify your own existence?
I don't. And only because I don't need to justify my existence in this country. And I say that because I've seen other communities come before ours who had to justify their existence in this country. And I understand the history of it. And I want my future kids to grow up in a world where they are thriving, where they are loved by their neighbors, where they don't have to justify who they are or their humanity. And so I don't. I came into this country. I became a United States citizen. I'm giving back to my neighbors. That's exactly what my parents did. That is the kind of Minnesota I want to be a part of. And so I more so put a light on the love of our community and how much we care about each other. And I don't put a lot of attention onto the hate that's coming from this administration and what he wants us to believe, because I think people overwhelmingly are rejecting it. And that's kind of the world I want to live in. And so, no, I don't justify it.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who is joining us. I see we've got a handful more people popping in. We are live with Senator Zaynab Mohamed talking about the president's statements about Somali Minnesotans and ICE operations targeting the Somali community in the state. I want to tell you about a little experience I had on Friday, actually. So Sahan goes to Carmel Mall like fairly often just to do little interviews, speak with community members. And on Friday, which I was told was going to be like a very exciting night, like a lot of people just tend to pop into the mall on Fridays just to do some little man on the street interviews. I don't think I've ever seen Carmel Mall so quiet. You talk about how you've seen a lot more community members like trying to reel in, trying to hide away. Can you explain or share some of these anxieties with me?
Yeah, I mean, people aren't going outside the way that they used to, and it's a shame, but I understand it. And they're doing that because they don't want to be harassed by random men who are driving in unmarked vehicles, who are going to come out of their cars with a ski mask and question them, right? That's the level of questioning people's humanities that people are dealing with. And I think it's so much more deeper than folks being afraid of ICE. What these actions are creating is an unsafe state, because this can easily lead to a case where somebody gets trafficked and ICE will say it wasn't us, and there will be no answer for it, because automatically people getting kidnapped in our streets right now is associated with ICE agents. And so I think folks are afraid of that. They don't want their family members to be kidnapped. They don't want to be questioned by random people. They don't want to justify their residency. They don't want to have to deal with the level of harassment that's coming from random people we've never met, who are often scary and who have been aggressive, who are pepper spraying people. And so they're choosing to do the peaceful thing, which is just stay home.
So Trump's verbal attacks are happening at the same time as a burst of immigration action. Like you're describing, federal agents are pulling people in out of their jobs, out of their homes, even off the street when they just go outside for casually getting food. It's hard to keep track of what is happening. And before we address some specific incidents, I want to know how you would describe what's going on right now in Minnesota.
I describe it in the most simplest way I can describe what's happening is by saying it's an invasion of our state. That's what's happening. You have random people who are deployed by a federal government that does not care about safety, that is deploying hundreds of people who are driving in unmarked vehicles, who are driving vehicles with outside of the state license, out of state license plates, who are not identifying themselves, who are not carrying a badge, who don't have judicial warrants to arrest people, who are wearing ski masks and hiding their faces, going up to people and asking them, like, who are you? Show me your residency. Where are you going? That is not an enforcement of the law. And in a normal government, what you have is ICE agents will tell the local government, hey, we're here to enforce some immigration laws. We have a list of people on our list. We're going to go and remove them. But that's not what's happening. The local government doesn't know what's happening. The state government doesn't know what's happening. It's absolute chaos. And it's scary.
So most of the time, whenever the news does start covering an incident, usually it's well documented, or there's some type of grand issue happening, such as, we'll get into more details later, a 20-year-old man being dragged in Cedar Riverside and taken by ICE agents, later released that day. We as news agencies and as news outlets, media outlets, typically hop onto those stories. But I guess I want to know what isn't being shown, what isn't being seen or heard from the community.
The countless people who've been stopped, who have who are legal residents of this country, the countless women who've been harassed, the folks who are looking around, going to work and wondering if they'll be stopped, when they'll be stopped. The fact that we are educating our families to carry their passport ID because we don't know when they'll be taken. I think the story that's not being shown by the media is the level of fear that this has created. And it's a fear that's righteous, right? It's fear where people are afraid for their families. I don't want my mom to go outside and be questioned, even though she's a United States citizen. It's the fact that people are being stopped on the basis of them looking like an immigrant, not on merits, not on judicial warrant. It's the level of bullying. It's the fact that they're pepper spraying people. Yesterday, I heard they were at Caramel and they dragged a pregnant woman through the ground and pepper sprayed everybody. That's not an enforcement of legal action. That's not what law enforcement looks like. That's what chaos looks like. That's what people do when they want to create spaces that are unsafe. That's unhealthy.
I guess I want to go back just a second. When you have these conversations with your own family members, what are you telling them? What are you guys talking about?
Carry their passport IDs. Answer if they have a question for you, but you don't need to answer questions. Show your passport ID and keep it moving. And I'm just trying to educate people on know your rights. You don't have to answer questions. You don't have to open your door. You don't have to open your business. You can just tell them get out. They don't leave often, but that's all that we can do.
What are you supposed to do when they don't stop harassing you?
Stay calm. Know your rights. And just call people in your family and friends and your network if you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for shedding a lot of light on the untold experiences of community members right now. I want to take a moment to I want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining us. If you've just joined, we are live with Senator Zaynab Mohamed. We are discussing immigrant concerns and the increase in immigration enforcement across Minnesota. If you have questions for the senator, feel free to ask them in chat. We'll be sure to get to them as soon as we can. So I'm going to go back to a recent incident that I believe happened last week. Sahan Journal reported on the arrest of Mushabir, a Somali U.S. citizen in his 20s, arrested by immigration officers in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood of Minneapolis while he was out picking up some food. Can you talk about that case at all and maybe share some other situations that are like it?
Yeah, I mean, he was a young guy who was on his lunch break, so I believe he was on his way to go get lunch, to go pick up food, and ICE agents just pulled up, grabbed him, arrested him. People were outraged. People were screaming when he was in the car that he's a United States citizen, he's a citizen, he's a citizen. They were not stopping. And I think he did a press conference where he was able to tell his stories. This is a young person who speaks in this country, who was raised here, who's a citizen, who they had no reason to stop. And so I think he's just one of the countless stories that we hear. When they got here that first day, they stopped two older men who were Somali, who told them that they were U.S. citizens. Both of them had their passport IDs, and they weren't. They stopped them anyway, and they questioned them. And so, I think what I want people to know is, like, when you see one story of somebody like Mubashar, who was stopped last Friday, it is one of countless countless stories of what's happening, what's taking place. What I worry most about is the moms who don't speak English, who are stopped on their way to work, on their way back from work. And I worry most about the mothers who work overnight in these factories and the level of harassment that they have to deal with. We're not going to know every single story, but those sit on the back of my mind, and I think about that often.
It looks like we've got a question from the audience. Real quick. Give me 1 second. This is from Casey Ulysses Marble. What legislative or legal action can Minnesota take to defend against federal immigration actions, especially when those actions violate state or even federal laws?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we're still trying to figure out what our authority is here. We are dealing with, federal law enforcement. And so in my brain, I just naturally go to, if they're violating the law, if they're violating people's constitutional rights, you just need to arrest them. But it's not as easy as that is said. I think folks are looking into it. I know that the AG's office, that the Minneapolis City Hall, our local leaders at the city are looking into it. We just want to see what our full rights are, and how do we require federal law enforcement to follow the state's laws when they're just here to violate it. And we don't know the details, so I don't have a specific answer for you yet. But what I'll tell you is we're looking into it.
I guess what are you pushing for, I guess, in terms of legal action?
Well, one, I'm talking a lot with our organizations who are doing amazing work and trying to see if we can. I know the ACLU is taking intakes on people who their constitutional rights have been violated, and I know that they're working on maybe even considering doing a lawsuit against the federal government on people who they've violated their constitutional rights. I'm working with my office is trying to look into where the statutes are at. And so maybe we'll have an answer, but I know there are a number of organizations doing intakes and seeing what our full authorities are in this moment.
Thank you, Senator. Looks like we've got another question from the audience. 1 second. This one is from, I don't know how to pronounce, You're Enough. What are your Republican peers doing while this complete chaos is happening here? This person, I've attempted to get my leaders, quote unquote, to condemn the hate, but this far, none are willing to speak to any of it.
Well, my Republican leaders have sent a letter to Donald Trump thanking him. I'm sure many of you guys know this. When this whole thing started, when Donald Trump called the community garbage, I sent a letter to all of the leaders. Lisa Davis was asked on press conference, are you going to respond to Senator Mohamed's email? Will you condemn the words of Trump? Will you stand with her at a press conference? And she said she hadn't seen my email. She called me later that day or 2 days later and said, I didn't see your email. And I reiterated what I said over the phone. And I said, what I'm asking you as a leader of the Republican caucus in the House is to step up, is to say you condemn this and to lead the way. She hasn't yet. And that is because Lisa Davis is seeking the endorsement of Donald Trump. She is running for the governor, to be the next governor of the state. And so what you see is a lack of leadership from the Republicans in the state, and they are all locked in with Washington. They want you to think differently, but not a single one of them has condemned what happened. Not a single one of them cares about the citizens of their state being violated by random ICE agents who don't have any rights to do so.
What do you mean they want you to think differently? What do you mean when you say that?
What I mean by that is they don't want to differentiate themselves from Donald Trump. They don't want to go out there and say, hey, what Donald Trump said about my fellow citizens who so happen to be Somali is wrong and I condemn it. What they want you to think is that what Donald Trump says is right and that they are locked in with him.
So, many are watching these types of enforcements and these types of enforcements happening in front of them on their screens and wondering, why is this happening? Federal immigration officials say they're picking up criminals for deportation. But how would you respond to that claim? And how would you characterize the people that ICE is arresting?
They're not. They're not here to enforce immigration laws. They are not here to come and question and detain people who came into this country unlawfully. Because if they did, they would have overwhelming amounts of judicial warrants. They would be going up to people. They would be following the right protocols. They would let the city know. They would let the state know. They would say, we're here to enforce immigration laws, and we have a list of people who've come to this country unlawfully, and so we're gonna go out there and we're gonna arrest them. That's not what's happening. They did a press release, and then they deployed hundreds of agents to the state of Minnesota who've created nothing but chaos.
I can't speak to on behalf of every individual who has been arrested in the last month or so, but I do know that earlier this year we saw a handful of Southeast Asian immigrants who were arrested for like 20-year-old, 10-year-old charges, sentences that they had already served. I just want to add that context as well. There is a lot of misinformation and disinformation spreading online right now about Somali Minnesotans. So I guess how can folks verify the information that they are seeing, that they are hearing about?
Can you say more about lots of information is being
Lots of like disinformation, like such as these claims that every single person is a violent, dangerous criminal, they're harboring drugs, etc. Like these types of disinformation that don't really have any validity or evidence to back up. I guess I want to know, how are you recommending people stay properly and safely informed, or at least sift through the slop?
Yeah, I mean, what people need to know are the stories of Mubashir and those two men and the countless people who've been arrested who are legal residents in this country, the countless people who their constitutional rights have been violated, the countless neighbors of theirs who've been pepper sprayed for no reason. There's a woman, they almost ran their car over her in Cedar Riverside. The fact that they're pulling up in 2-3 number of cars with hundreds of agents just to instill fear in people. And so they're not just taking actions against citizens, which is illegal. What they're doing is they're instilling fear in people. They want every single person to feel like they are deportable. So they're not here to deport every person. They're here to basically question any and everybody who looks like an immigrant. So if you look like me or Alberto, you look like you, it doesn't matter what your residency is, they will question you. Because they want your family and your friends to feel like they are also deportable, which is why we're asking people to carry their passport IDs.
Is that what you believe that ICE agents are here to do as well? Just to instill this anxiety?
I think that's part of it. Part of it is to instill anxiety and fear in people. They want every person who's an immigrant in this state to feel like that their place in this country is questioned. And it is only up to the president to decide whether you can stay in this country or not. That this country isn't built on freedoms and rights for people. They want you to not have the freedoms that everybody has. I think that's a part of the cultural problem that's happening. The other part that's happening is they are actually questioning people who are citizens, and they are violating people's rights. And that's wrong. And so why else would they be doing that if they didn't want other people to feel like they were deportable? When Mubashir goes home and he's just been detained by ICE agents, what is he telling his family? He's telling them his story of what just happened to him, even though he's a citizen. That family is going to be afraid for their lives. They're going to be carrying their passports and their passport IDs because this just happened to their son. Because now they feel like they're deportable. That's the level of anxiety that's being created by this administration.
For anyone just now tuning in, first of all, thank you for hopping into our Instagram Live. We are here with Senator Zaynab Mohamed discussing the recent ICE arrests of Somali Minnesotans. Next, we are going to dive in on how the community is responding. If you have questions for Senator Mohamed, please put them in the chat, and we'll be sure to share them as soon as we can. So, immigration officials have been seeing a chaos across Minnesota. Sorry, I'm tripping over my own words. There are a lot of thoughts happening right now. Immigration officials have been seen across Minnesota, not just in the Twin Cities. Chanhassen, Chaska, Rochester, etc. Community groups have made efforts to tell people how to protect themselves from ICE arrests. Carry this document or avoid that place. What advice do you, Senator, think is most useful right now?
I think the most useful advice is number one, know your rights. There are a number of organizations doing know your rights trainings across the state. If you're a resident and a United citizen, become a legal observer so that you can put your body on the line and help protect your immigrant neighbors. For the folks who are immigrants and citizens, what I ask them to do is carry your IDs, carry your documents, so that you don't have to deal with the harassment that's coming from these agents.
There are two things I want to follow that up with. First, we've heard the phrase "know your rights" constantly in the last year. I just want to put a definition to that phrase. Can you help clarify what "know your rights" means?
It means understanding what your full rights are when you interact with an ICE agent. And so making sure that in order for them to question you, they have to have a judicial warrant, and that means a warrant that's signed by a judge. And if they don't have that, then you don't have to answer their questions, making sure that you have a right to an attorney and that you can just say, talk to my attorney. Know your rights just means understand as a legal resident who is dealing with ICE agents that are invading our neighborhoods, understanding how to interact with them and understanding where the laws are so you can protect yourself with the law.
Okay. And the second was, for a lot of my life, I have been taught as well to just always carry documents saying that I'm a citizen. For most of my life, I've carried my passport, Social Security, any form of documentation to show that I am allowed to be here. I was born in the United States, by the way. And yet these are still things that I was taught. But last week, when we saw that 20-year-old boy being arrested and still saying he has his documentation on him and still not necessarily being permitted to leave, how should someone be handling a situation like that? Because I was taught he was doing everything right and he still was arrested.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that we won't be able to control, right? Because we are in an unprecedented time. And we don't really know exactly who and what we're dealing with and what they're capable of. And so for me, I tell my brothers and my cousins, stay as calm as possible, be vigilant, understand what your rights are, carry your documents. If they ask for it, just show them. Make sure that you have the phone numbers of your loved ones memorized in the case that they do arrest you and take you somewhere else, so you know who to call. Mm-hmm. Make sure you have an attorney in mind and somebody who can protect you legally that you know.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question from the chat. Give me 1 second. This is from Casey Ulysses Marble again. Do you think these ICE agents who come from different parts of the country pose a public safety threat because they don't know how to operate during a Minnesota winter?
Oh, well, you would hope that the Minnesota winter would keep them away. This weekend was below zero? It was negatives. They were still outside terrorizing people in Chanhassen. So no, I don't think anything stops them from what they're trying to do. But they do pose a threat to the public safety of the state. What they're creating is absolute chaos and fear. And it's not okay.
Similar to that, at that standoff in Chanhassen, it was, I think, 4 hours long.
Yep.
And it ended up with, I think, just 1 or 2 of the roof workers getting hospitalized from being exposed to such extreme temperatures. So at the very least, it's putting someone in danger.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. Many community groups in Minnesota are collaborating to create groups like the Immigrant Defense Network to address ICE raids. How are these partnerships going? What's working and honestly, what's not working with these groups?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing well. We are in a moment where we've never had to deal with as Minnesotans. We've never had this many ICE agents deployed to this state. We've never had ICE agents targeting the Somali community. We know that the Latino community is organized because they had been dealing with this harassment for a number of years. But I think what's really special about the Immigrant Defense Network is it's a collective organization. It's like hundreds of them, all of them from different backgrounds and races. And they're coming together on one solution is to create some sort of a defense network for the immigration crisis that's happening in the state. COBOL is like wonderful and helpful on that. And we've got, like I also think it's creating a real tangible solidarity between the Latino community and the Somali community. And I think it's beautiful because what we see is, yes, we're being targeted, but we're citizens, and so they also don't want us to pay attention to the Latino community, which is a huge target here. And so I've been saying like we need to focus on them as well, and just make sure that we do what we can to protect that community.
I guess I want to know a little bit more about like the strategies. Like, what are these organizations doing, like physically doing?
Yeah, so they're doing rapid response. So whenever there's like ICE agents at Augsburg, Caramel, any of these places, they have different networks of folks in different parts of the state who they can just say, ICE agents are coming here, go over there. But I think it's also become so big that it's become its own thing. So there are these rapid response group chats all over the state. And often, like when I hear one, I'll text somebody from the Immigrant Defense Network and they'll send some of their folks over there. They're also communicating resources that can be taking place. So I've had families who were displaced. They helped me find a home for them. Yeah, like they're doing a number of things. So they're doing the on the ground defense network. They're doing the trainings for know your rights, become a legal observer. They're helping people find housing where they can. They're working, it's an ongoing thing, but I think they're doing what institutions right now just aren't able to do, especially government systems. And the way I've been describing it best is to say, we do also have an undocumented community in the state who, do deserve safety in this country and who are humans. And I say that they are an entire population living in the shadows of our system. Or people who are residents who want to live in the shadows of the system because they don't want to deal with agents. And so they're helping them find the supports that they need.
Thank you, Senator. We're a little more than halfway through our conversation now, so I want to thank everyone for stopping in. If you're just now popping in, we are here with Senator Zaynab Mohamed. We're talking about the Somali community's reactions to ICE enforcement in Minnesota and the ongoing struggles faced by that. If you have any questions for Senator Mohamed or us, please let us know right away in the chat. We'll be sure to get to them as soon as we can. Speak of the devil, though, we've got a question from chat right now. This is from someone named Rachel. Do you feel like whistle use to alert neighbors about ICE presence is effective within the Somali community? Seward Neighborhood Group is hosting a session to assemble ICE preparedness.
Yeah, it is. Like, I think I was next to Cedar Riverside before the whole thing happened. Like, Wabashar was taking, I was like parking, and I heard whistles. And people were just like running outside. And I think it's a good way. I think in the beginning it was like a little odd, but I think right now people know what it is. And so folks go out there and they're like, oh, there must be ICE agents here. Let me go do what I can to protect my immigrant neighbors.
It's like it's like a fire alarm. Yeah. I've got another question.
You hear it, you know what it is. People have people know what to associate it with.
Now it's directly associated with ICE
ICE
enforcement.
agents, yeah.
Looks like I've got another question from chat.
I chat.
Just a fifth person. What can people do to help? What can people do to help besides just show up while people are being targeted?
There's so much we can do. The number one thing that you can do is like, and I'm starting to like teach people and train people on it, is connect with your neighbors. It's really good to know who your neighbors are, but it's also really good to know the school your kids go to or even you go to, because right now you probably have kids who aren't showing up to school because their parents don't want to be harassed by ICE agents. And so you can create a support system for them. You can go and drive the kids to school and pick them up for those parents. You can create a food drive, a small network of food drive to see which parents in the community don't want to be outside so that they're harassed by ICE agents and drop off meals to them or groceries. I think there's so many ways that you can become a legal observer.
Yeah.
You can learn to become a trainer and then train people in your neighborhood. Yeah.
I wanted to add, we've seen a couple of Latin American grocery stores start offering free delivery for family members who are scared to go outside right now. So if you look on sahanjournal.com, you can find our recent story on that.
That's great. I love that.
I thought it was really heartwarming. So I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, it's one thing for the president of the United States to say things from the other side of the country. You know, we already are aware that he has a certain rhetoric that we can expect. But what have you heard from people in Minnesota, you know, especially from other state politicians? You mentioned that some were generally praising this type of enforcement. But I guess, what have you been hearing?
Well, a number of things. Number one is I think silence is a form of an agreement in this moment. I think the lack of Republican leaders wanting to step forward and say, I don't agree with that. I think it's an indication of their leadership, and it's an indication of their alignment with Donald Trump. So that's number one. We've also seen, the overwhelming amount of people who are afraid to say something because they don't want Donald Trump to make a social media post about them and lose their elections. So politically, I'm seeing a lot of that. Is that I think the thing that's become very clear to me politically in this moment is at the state level, Republicans in Minnesota are very locked in with Donald Trump and his administration. And it's really surprising because I used to think differently of them. I used to think that's not who they were, but that's exactly who they are. And it's really unfortunate. There's over 100 Republicans in the legislature, and only one of them made a statement, and that's Jim Abler. Mm-hmm. He's the only one after we've asked for them to condemn who wrote a letter who condemned, and I think it speaks to his leadership, but I think their silence speaks to the leadership of the party. We've also seen, Democratic leaders step up across the board, and condemn what's happening and condemn what Trump is doing, and have sent letters to the DHS agency asking questions. Governor Tim Walz just did that last week. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has done that. I think there's a very clear difference between when it comes to politically what's happening at the state level between the two parties.
So on the flip side, though, I don't know if you're on this side of TikTok or Instagram, but I've been seeing a lot of, younger people, younger Somali Americans.
Oh, I love this already.
making jokes and trying to make light of the situation, saying like, no, Minnesota is promised to us 3,000 years ago. Trying to subvert this expectation, maybe laugh in the face of danger, I want to know, how have you been thinking about these types of videos? Like why are these types of videos existing in the first place too?
Well, I think number one, I am on that side of TikTok and Instagram, and I love it. Number one, I think it shows how creative our people are. Somali people are like incredibly creative, and we say this as Somalis. I don't think other people do, but we always say we are the funniest people on the planet, and I think the rest of the country is experiencing that, which is awesome. I mean, these young people are born and raised in this country. They're in their teens and early 20s, and they're seeing the president of this country say horrible things about them, and they're like, go where? We've been here for 3,000 years, and that's their response to him. But I think it one shows how funny they are, but two, it shows how confident and comfortable they are in this country. Like, we also live here. We also serve. This is our country. We're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of them because I think they're showing a different side of being Somali Nimo, who you are, being comfortable in your skin, going out there making fun of these people, because I think the jokes that they have made what it's done is it's made the rest of the country see how unserious this administration is.
It's both humanizing and ridiculing the actual circumstance.
Yeah, I love them. Keep doing it, y'all.
Sadly, we do have to get back to serious questions
Okay.
and topics. Last week, CARE Minnesota last week, Care Minnesota announced a new community task force to respond to ICE arrests. What's new about this effort, and what could make it a success?
Well, they're organized, right? And so they've created a task force because they understand that in this moment government is weak, both at the city and state level. And so like it's one of those moments where you rely on community to do the work. And so they have this task force that's working on not just rapid response, but they're creating long term sort of vision for Somali people. And so like what does it mean to be Somali in this country? I think they want to create a day where they say that Somali Day in Minnesota on June 26th, I think. They want to like, they want to have like not a holiday, but like rename the day. But I think the task force is also meant to like instill pride in people and in community. And, they're also asking people to go shop at these small businesses right now that are having a shortage of sales because people are staying home. I think what's different about the task force is like we as Somalis have never had to question our own immigration status, and we have to do that this time for the first time ever. And so this task force is meant for us to like grapple with what can we do to protect ourselves.
You mentioned earlier in the show that you personally don't question or feel the need to justify your existence in this state.
Mhm.
I guess but can you speak for other people maybe? Like, what does that experience feel like trying to say, no, I have a right to be here. This is my home.
Yeah, I mean, people are even questioning whether their green card is valid, right? And so, like, you have people who being a citizen in this moment is a privilege, which is fascinating because people work really hard to become a United States citizen takes so much work, and like it's so much. People take so much pride in that, and I think you have a lot of older parents who are like, I need to find every single one of the pieces of papers of how I became a citizen, from my interview questions, when I took my interview, when I passed it, when I got my my certification, when I got my passport. They want to be as ready and as comfortable as possible. But that's because our parents have been through so much. They've literally escaped war. They came to this country, and now like their residency in in this country is questioned. And a lot of it is cultural, right? So that's kind of what they want. They want to create that culture of like fearfulness. I grew up with parents who were like always afraid of like everything. They wanted things to be perfect, follow the law perfect. They never wanted to be questioned. And we have a younger generation that's like, I've been here. This is my home. I've never even known what Somalia was like. And so that level of fear is what they want to instill in this new generation. But as you can tell, these young people they're moving along just fine.
Casual flip-offs to
That's right.
the idea that they're not supposed to be here. We are almost at the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here with Senator Zaynab Mohamed. We're talking about Somali communities' recent charges with immigration and ICE agents in Minnesota and their stories themselves. Senator Mohamed, you immigrated to Minnesota from Somalia, correct?
That's right.
When you were a child, would you be comfortable sharing, or I tripped over my words again. You immigrated here when you were a child. Would you be comfortable sharing what you remember about how your family got settled in Minnesota? How they found work, what it was like going to school and connecting with your own neighborhood?
Yeah. So my family immigrated here when I was 9 years old, almost like at the end of when I was 8. So 9 years old, we'll say. And it was my mom and all my siblings, 9 of us. And my mom's first job ever was at a food factory called Michael's. And she had been there, that was like her first job ever, which is in Chaska, Minnesota. So she would drive out like at about an hour. We settled in South Minneapolis. So if you know Powderhorn neighborhood, that was the first neighborhood that my family settled in. And it was my home up until I was an adult, and my parents still own their home there. They ended up purchasing their home when I was in high school. When we first came, we were on Section 8 vouchers for a little bit, and then later on, my mom was able to stand on her own 2 feet, thankfully. I learned English in this country. I came as a young person, but like somebody who also had some memories when I came here. And I remember navigating the school system, and I remember navigating paperwork for my mom. And my mom has actually never had the opportunity to go to school. Often when parents come here, like the bank will translate it in Somali so they can read and write. My mom never had the opportunity to go to school back home. And so she never learned how to read or write. She learned how to write her own name in this country. And so a lot of it was like me trying to explain to the school and to doctors and to the bank, like she can't read. And so like also teaching. So my mother was learning alongside myself and my siblings. And so I often talk about like, I'm an immigrant, but I'm also like so much pride for my family because like they've been through so much, but they're so resilient. And like, I think our story is the epitome of the American dream. It's what it means to come to this country, to get an education. Every single one of my siblings graduated college, to work hard, to support your neighbors. And that's what I've done. That's what my parents have done. And I'm not gonna allow what few people who are in power say about our community or about our family, because I know my family is one of countless stories that are way more powerful than mine and way more beautiful than mine. And I try to keep that in the back of my mind and try to share that because I think that's what's most powerful in this moment.
Thank you for sharing this with me, Senator. You know, beyond the hateful tone, President's statements about Somalis seem really disconnected from the experience of the community here. And that starts with the story of how Somali refugees first came to America, or to Minnesota specifically. What do you wish people knew about that migration, that story?
That you have a group of people who are fleeing war and famine and coming to this country for safety. You had a state that took them in, and they didn't question whether they wanted to go to California in the sunny warm or if they just wanted to be a place where they were accepted. And that's what Minnesota did. That's what Minnesotans did. They accepted them. I remember like at the airport, a woman bought me my first socks, right? And when we were flying into New York City, and it was a white woman named Sarah. I still remember. I remember when I had my first burger. And so these are memories a lot of these people have. And like, it's memories our kids won't have because they're not going to have that experience. But like, I think what I would want people to know is like, this is home. Minnesotans have always accepted these people. And they are, you hear all the time they're in every industry, but they are just your neighbors who were escaping some of the worst conditions to find safety. And Minnesotans said, yeah, you can come be my neighbor and we'll ensure your safety. And this president is taking that away and wants to. But I think his divisiveness is making Minnesota so much stronger. I've had thousands of people email me from all over this state, from small towns who are like, how can we support my immigrant neighbors? My kids go to school with Somalis. How can I support? And I think it's creating a better space and a better state than we had thought was even possible.
This is a small and very important question to me.
Yeah.
Where was your first burger?
I think it was at the airport in New York City, and I think it was at, I don't remember the details, but I was at JFK. It was a burger. I remember because I remember being like, "Why are there two breads with me?"
This is my final.
But Matt's
question.
Burger is my favorite right now.
Matt's Burgers. Oh, the place with the Juicy Lucy's, right down Cedar.
Yeah.
I drive by that place constantly.
Have you been?
No.
You have to go.
There's so many places in the city that I drive by.
No, Matt's Burger is special.
All right. Chat, hold me accountable to this one. I need to go to Matt's Burgers and get a Juicy Lucy.
Yeah.
This is my last question for you, and I want to end on something a little more positive in light of everything we've talked about. We're living in a very chaotic time, to say the least. But right now, what's giving you hope?
My community. I mentioned this earlier. We started a food drive a week ago, and we delivered to over 30 families yesterday and over 30 families last Friday, and we're going to have more deliveries today. I had a school reach out that said they want 50 deliveries to families, and it's becoming its own thing. People are starting in their neighborhoods, in their schools, and that's what I want it to be. And it's showing me that our community is way more connected than I thought we were, and we care so deeply about our neighbors and each other. I've had so many people shovel my snow, bring me food, take care of each other, and I want to spread that kind of love because I think that's what's most important right now.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you to our guest, Senator Zaynab Mohamed. We will post the full conversation on Sahan Journal's YouTube page later today. You can also find previous Instagram Lives there as well. We will also publish a recap article highlighting key takeaways from our conversation shortly. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope everyone has a wonderful evening and takes care of themselves.
Thanks, Alberto.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.